Hi, everyone. This is 10 Books for 10 Essential Conversations. My name is Vikki VanSickle, and I'm the Marketing and Publicity Director for Tundra Books, Puffin Canada, and Penguin Teen Canada. Our publishing team is located in Canada, but we publish authors and illustrators from around the world, and all of the books I'm going to present today are available across North America and can be ordered by your preferred wholesaler or by contacting your Random House Children's Book Rep. Today, we wanted to feature 10 books that we think will help spark meaningful conversations with students. This is just a small sample of our list, so please visit tundrabooks.com to see our full catalog, access our downloadable materials, and find out more. Let's talk about self-confidence with Carol and the Pickle-Toad, written and illustrated by Esme Shapiro. In the big city, people wear all kinds of hats. Not everyone wears a toad as a hat, but some people do, and some of those toad hats can be very bossy. Carol has always followed the orders of her demanding toad hat at the expense of her own inner voice. But when her toad hat is plucked away by a pigeon, how will Carol know what to do? After spending so long being told what to eat and do and paint, Carol's not sure what she wants, and nothing feels quite right. Feeling lost, she creates a new hat to help guide her. And even though her new Pickle-Toad doesn't make a sound, Carol can hear it loud and clear. Carol begins to understand that there is a big booming voice that lives inside herself and that it's well worth listening to. Carol and the Pickle-Toad is a springboard for conversations about self-confidence, finding your inner voice, standing up for yourself, and learning to love yourself. Esme Shapiro creates warm, wonderful worlds with her vibrant, folksy art and quirky, memorable characters. Her offbeat sense of humor creates a safe space to explore big feelings, in this case, self-doubt and learning to silence your inner critic. Personifying the inner critic as a bossy toad takes the sting out of self-doubt and provides a concrete analogy that will help kids recognize that the toad voice inside them that says they are too small or not smart enough can be defeated. Let's talk about vulnerability with Tough Like Mom by Lana Button and Carmen Mock. What does it mean to be tough? Kim's mom is tough. She can deal with unruly customers at the Red Rooster with a snap of her fingers. Kim is tough too. She doesn't need to wear a hat to keep her ears warm, and she can make soup all by herself, even without the stove. In this tender exploration of a mother-daughter relationship, Kim and her mother learn that in order to support and truly take care of each other, they need to be tough, and that sometimes being tough means showing vulnerability and asking for help. Tough Like Mom is a great springboard for conversations about vulnerability, what makes someone tough, seeking help, and economic diversity. We are living in tough times. Our understanding of resilience, vulnerability, and strength are due for a makeover. Toughness doesn't always mean hard. It can mean being honest and asking for help. Tough Like Mom is an intimate portrayal of a mother-daughter who are economically disadvantaged. Their power has been shut off, and there isn't enough money for a field trip. Author Lana Button is a teacher, and her work is inspired by her students and is deeply empathetic. Let's talk about conservation and the environment with Constellation of the Deep by Benjamin Flow. Fox loves nature and enjoys discovering strange and fascinating plants. One day, Seagull tells him about an especially interesting underwater plant called the Constellation of the Deep. According to Seagull, it grows in the bottom of the ocean, but no one knows exactly where, and it glows in the dark. Before long, Fox sets off on an underwater quest to find this incredible plant. With spreads of informational content interspersed throughout, Constellation of the Deep details the wonders of the underwater world and celebrates observing the beauty of nature. Constellation of the Deep is a great springboard for conversations about sea life, biodiversity, conservation, climate change, and respecting the natural world. The art is spectacular and includes illustrated lists of plants and scuba gear for information-loving kids. STEM is shifting to include climate change and conservation, and this book is a love letter to the ocean. Let's talk about girls and women in STEM with This Is Ruby by Sarah O'Leary and Aaliyah Marley. Ruby loves to make things, watch things grow, and figure out how things work. And Ruby has lots of ideas about what she wants to be. Maybe an animal conservationist or an archaeologist. She's great at excavating, like digging holes. Or maybe an inventor. She's already invented a book with smells instead of words, so dogs can read it. For fans of The Most Magnificent Thing, Rosie Revere engineer, and This Is Sadie, This is Ruby, and this is her world. This is Ruby is a great springboard for conversation about the scientific process, inventing, design, exploration, and curiosity. Ruby has a limitless imagination and considers a range of STEM-related careers. Illustrator Aaliyah Marley draws on her own heritage and experiences growing up in the Barbados to create a vibrant Caribbean-inspired setting and an unforgettable Black heroine in Ruby. It is important for girls to see themselves reflected in traditionally male-dominated spaces, like STEM, and even more so for girls of color to have a mirror like Ruby to help stoke these dreams. Let's talk about Disabled Characters with Out into the Big Wide Lake by Paul Harbridge and José Bissayon. It's Kate's first time visiting her grandparents on her own at their lakeside home. She helps her grandfather with his grocery deliveries by boat, where she meets all the neighbors, even the grumpy ones. Her grandmother even teaches her to pilot the boat all by herself. But when her grandfather takes ill, and it's up to Kate to make those deliveries. But can she really do it? Based on the author's sister, Kate is a lovable, brave, smart, and feisty character with Down syndrome who will capture your heart in this gorgeous and moving story. Out into the Big Wide Lake is a great springboard for conversations about facing your fears and becoming independent, something all children can relate to. It also features a child with Down syndrome. Kate's Down syndrome doesn't define her character, nor are her challenges defined by it either. Trying something for the first time, overcoming fear, and being given a level of responsibility are universal experiences. As the book's editor says, quote, having a Down syndrome character embody the freedom and universal experience felt important, end quote. Let's talk about Indigenous culture and stories with On the Trapline by David A. Robertson and Julie Flett. A boy and Moshem, his grandfather, take a trip together to visit a place of great meaning to Moshem. A trapline is where people hunt and live off the land, and it is where Moshem grew up. As they embark on their northern journey, the child repeatedly asks his grandfather, "Is this your trapline?" Along the way, the boy finds himself imagining what life was like 2 generations ago, a life that appears to be both different and similar to his life now. This is a heartfelt story about memory, imagination, and intergenerational connection that perfectly captures the experience of a young child's wonder. On the Trapline is a great tool to discuss Indigenous culture and history and the importance of familial and intergenerational connections. Both author and illustrator have family members who worked on a trapline, and there is back matter to support this. Cree words and phrases are introduced throughout the text, making this an ideal book for classroom use. Let's continue to talk about Indigenous stories with Walking in Two Worlds, a YA fantasy by Wab Canoe. In the real world, Bugs is a shy and self-conscious Indigenous teen who faces the stresses of life on the res. But in the virtual world, her alter ego is not just confident, but dominant in a massive multiplayer video game. Fang is a teen boy who has just been sent from China to live with his aunt, a doctor on the res, after his online activity suggests he may be developing extremist sympathies. Meeting each other in real life, as well as in the virtual world, Bugs and Fang immediately relate to each other. But betrayal threatens everything Bugs has built in the virtual world, and she must learn to reconcile the parallel aspects of her life, traditional and mainstream, east and west, real and virtual. Walking in Two Worlds weaves together many themes and issues facing teens today, including an increasingly virtual space, gaming, cultural and societal pressures, and more. Performer, politician, and activist Wab Canoe has dedicated his life to celebrating and amplifying Indigenous culture, and this novel decolonizes and challenges the YA fantasy genre, weaving in needed perspectives and voices. Let's talk about Asian American stories with Peter Lee's Notes from the Field. 11-year-old Korean-Canadian Peter Lee has 2 goals in life: to become a paleontologist and to get his genius kid sister, LB, to leave him alone. But his summer falls apart when his real-life dinosaur expedition turns out to be a bust, and he watches his dreams go up in a cloud of asthma-inducing dust. Even worse, his grandmother is sick, and no one will talk to Peter about it. Perhaps his days as a scientist aren't quite behind him yet. Armed with a notebook and pens, Peter puts his observation and experimental skills to the test to see what he can do for his grandmother, Hammy. Peter Lee's Notes from the Field is the funny, poignant middle grade story about a contemporary Korean-American family and inspires conversations about family, intergenerational connections, dementia, asthma, and the contemporary Asian American experience. The diary style with spot illustrations will appeal to younger readers. Let's talk about diversifying fantasy with Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao. Pacific Rim meets The Handmaid's Tale in this blend of Chinese history and mecha science fiction for YA readers. The boys of Huaxie dream of pairing up with girls to pilot chrysalises, giant transforming robots that can battle the aliens that lurk beyond the Great Wall of China. It doesn't matter that the girls die from the mental strain. When 18-year-old Zetian offers herself up as a concubine pilot, it's to assassinate the ace male responsible for her sister's death. But when she gets her vengeance, it becomes clear that she is an Iron Widow, a rare kind of female pilot who can sacrifice males to power up the chrysalises instead. But now that Zetian has had a taste of power, she will not cower so easily. She will take over instead, then leverage their combined strength to force her society to stop failing its women and girls, or die trying. Iron Widow is an action-packed, adrenaline-soaked YA novel with strong LGBTQIA representation that will spark conversations about feminism, rage, the patriarchy, Chinese history, and mecha science fiction. The protagonist is based on Wu Zetian, the only female emperor in Chinese history. Zhao's novel plays with aspects of science fiction and fantasy, creating a radically different reading experience. There is incredible online buzz for this novel, as you can see on the screen, which we think demonstrates how hungry readers are for something powerful and something different. Let's talk about building inclusive spaces with Narwhal's School of Awesomeness by Ben Clanton. In the sixth book in the New York Times bestselling series, Narwhal and Jelly become substitute teachers. The first subject is Waffle-matics, in which Narwhal and Jelly calculate the number of waffles needed to feed the class. Next up is a super fun science scavenger hunt, followed by a game of Tag You're Awesome at recess. Narwhal's teaching methods may be unconventional, but with Jelly's help, the two teach and learn with their trademark positivity and humor. The Narwhal and Jelly series has long been praised for its positivity and optimism, which really shines in these 4 new school-based stories. Given the disruption in schooling and social situations this past year, there is a greater need for positive, uplifting stories about school, so children feel safe and excited to return to a learning environment. We think teachers especially will love this latest Narwhal and Jelly book and will find lots of ideas for their own classrooms in the pages. Thank you again for joining us at Tundra Books. This has been 10 Essential Books for 10 Essential Conversations. Please join us online and we'll talk to you soon.